Dear listeners, what you're about to hear isn't just another news story. It's a warning bell that could affect your family's future. NATO has just made a dramatic move that brings us closer to a dangerous precipice, and you need to understand why. In a chilling development at their recent summit in The Hague, NATO has officially branded Russia as a long-term threat. But here's what should really make you pause. Estonia, that tiny Baltic state, is now offering to host nuclear-capable NATO aircraft right on Russia's doorstep. Think about that. Nuclear weapons just minutes from Russian cities. This isn't just military posturing. We're witnessing a calculated strategy where smaller NATO states are being positioned as pawns in a larger geopolitical chess game. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, are being transformed into potential flashpoints, with their citizens unknowingly placed on the front lines of a dangerous confrontation. Who benefits from this escalation? Certainly not the average European citizen facing skyrocketing energy prices and economic uncertainty. The military-industrial complex, however, is celebrating as defense budgets swell and new weapons contracts flow. For ordinary citizens like you, this means increased tension, higher defense spending from your tax dollars, and the shadow of nuclear confrontation looming larger. The NATO strategy appears designed to provoke a response using smaller states as triggers for potential conflict. Most concerning is NATO's reaffirmation of Article 5, their all for one, one for all clause. This means any incident, even a manufactured provocation in Estonia, could drag all NATO members into a direct confrontation with Russia. Are we seeing history repeat itself? Is this another case of larger powers using smaller nations as chess pieces in their global power game? Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and share your thoughts on this dangerous escalation. Are you concerned about these developments in your region? Remember, this isn't just distant geopolitics. It's about your security, your economy, and your future. Stay tuned as we continue to uncover the real story behind these alarming developments. The hypocrisy in international relations becomes starkly apparent when examining historical precedents. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 serves as a mirror to today's tensions. When Soviet missiles were being constructed, the U.S. brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. Yet today, NATO deploys advanced weapon systems minutes from Russian borders, expecting acceptance. Consider the dynamics. Russia faces unprecedented military infrastructure, expansion along its western frontier. While Western media portrays this as defensive positioning, how would Washington react if Russia established missile bases in Mexico or Venezuela? The double standard is glaring. Our satellite imagery shows increasing military activities in the region bordering Russia. Russia's strategic response has been measured. The recent deployment of S-400 systems and hypersonic capabilities demonstrates our technological superiority while maintaining defensive posture. I'm interested in hearing from viewers outside Russia. What's the media narrative in your country? Share your perspective in the comments. Your local insight helps us understand the global information landscape. Want to stay updated on critical geopolitical analysis? Hit subscribe now. Looking at NATO's moves, they've consistently underestimated Russian capabilities. While they boast about technological advantages, Russian military innovations have surprised Western experts. The Kinzhal hypersonic missile system has no equivalent in NATO's arsenal. Consider this. The former Soviet Republic on our western border now hosts foreign military advisors. But during the Cuban Missile Crisis, even the suggestion of foreign military presence in America's backyard was considered an act of war. Want me to analyze the military-political situation in your region next time? Let me know where you're watching from. The next segment will reveal shocking details about Western military planning hidden from public view. You won't want to miss this information that challenges everything you've been told about current events. Title: Estonia's Nuclear Gambit, a strategic analysis of Baltic tensions. Recent developments in the Baltic region have raised significant concerns about escalating military tensions. Estonia's defense minister made a statement expressing readiness to host NATO's F-35A stealth fighters capable of carrying nuclear weapons, representing a dramatic shift in regional military dynamics. Let's examine this logically. Estonia, sharing a border with Russia, is essentially declaring its willingness to become a potential nuclear staging point. This isn't just about defensive capabilities. It's about strategic positioning that fundamentally alters the security equation in the region. Consider the principle of equal application of rules and international norms. If we accept certain military deployments as legitimate in one context, we must apply the same standard universally. The question becomes, would Western powers accept similar military installations along their borders? The Kremlin's response was predictable, characterizing this as a direct threat to Moscow. From a strategic perspective, this reaction is understandable. Any nuclear-capable aircraft stationed minutes from major population centers would naturally be viewed as a significant security concern. The timing is notable, following NATO's formal designation of Russia as a long-term threat. This sequence of events suggests a coordinated approach to pressure building in the Baltic region, using smaller states as strategic leverage points. What's concerning is the casual nature of discussing nuclear-capable aircraft deployments. This isn't merely about defensive posturing, it represents a significant escalation in regional military dynamics. The Estonian defense minister's statement about being ready if necessary raises questions about what conditions would constitute such necessity. We must consider the broader implications. This move could trigger a cascade of reciprocal military positioning, potentially destabilizing an already tense situation. History shows us that such escalatory cycles rarely end well for smaller nations caught between major powers. What do you think about Estonia's decision to potentially host nuclear-capable aircraft? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'm eager to hear your perspective. Title: NATO's Baltic Provocations, a strategic analysis of nuclear tensions. In today's analysis, we're examining growing tensions between NATO and Russia in the Baltic region. The situation deserves careful attention, particularly regarding Estonia's provocative stance on hosting F-35s with potential nuclear capabilities. Estonia's leadership has openly declared their readiness to host these advanced aircraft, claiming it's within their rights as NATO allies. However, Dmitry Peskov's response points out the absurdity of such statements from Baltic politicians. Consider the geography. Estonia sits mere minutes from St. Petersburg, Russia's cultural capital. When examining the map, the threat becomes clear. A nuclear-capable aircraft positioned in Estonia could reach St. Petersburg in minutes, and Moscow isn't much further. What's particularly concerning is the concentration of Russia's nuclear arsenal in its European territory. This creates a powder keg situation, especially given the deteriorating relations with the Baltic states. As Peskov stated, relations with the Baltic republics can hardly get worse. Looking at the broader picture, we see a pattern emerging. Poland, Romania, and the Baltic states are being positioned as potential provocateurs in what appears to be a coordinated strategy. This aligns with NATO's recent designation of Russia as a long-term threat, a move that seems designed to justify increased military presence along Russian borders. The timing is significant when considering recent events involving the politically turbulent region to Russia's south. We're witnessing a calculated escalation that mirrors historical patterns of encirclement. This isn't just about military capabilities. It's about the deliberate creation of pressure points along Russia's borders. The question isn't if these tensions will escalate, but when and how severely. What's your assessment of this situation? Do you think these military deployments are purely defensive, or is there a more aggressive strategy at play? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insights help us understand these complex developments better. Remember, we're analyzing facts, not promoting hysteria. Stay informed, stay vigilant. What do you think about the current situation? Leave your answer in the comments. Title: Small States Playing Big Games, the Nuclear Chess Match in Eastern Europe. Breaking news. Estonia, a nation of just 1.3 million people, is stepping into a dangerous geopolitical game that could have nuclear consequences. Recent developments show how smaller NATO members are being used as pieces in a larger strategic puzzle against Russia. Let's analyze this situation carefully. Estonia's potential hosting of nuclear-capable aircraft isn't just about defense, it's about provocation. Think about it. A country the size of a modest city is now positioning itself as a nuclear threat to one of the world's major powers. This isn't just risky, it's potentially catastrophic. We've seen this pattern before with Romania. When they accepted U.S. air defense systems, Russia's response was crystal clear. They were immediately added to the nuclear targeting protocol. The Russians, who previously had no nuclear contingency plans for Romania, created them specifically in response. Some crucial points to consider. Russia's reaction time to any potential threat from Estonia would be minimal. The distance factor makes U.S. protection questionable at best. Small states are being used as provocateurs in a larger geopolitical game. Let me share a relevant analogy from my past experiences with circus performances. In a circus, when small performers try to provoke large predators, it's not bravery, it's recklessness. The same principle applies here. Small states playing dangerous games with nuclear-capable powers isn't strategy. It's a recipe for disaster. The reality is stark. America's promises of protection ring hollow when you consider the geographic and temporal distances involved. When crisis strikes, response times matter, and Russia's proximity to Estonia means any conflict would escalate before Western allies could even react. This situation perfectly illustrates how smaller states are being manipulated into positions that could trigger catastrophic consequences. The question isn't if this is dangerous, it's how long before this high-stakes game leads to a serious miscalculation. What do you think about this situation? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I believe my viewers are insightful experts, and I'm genuinely interested in your perspective. An intriguing metaphor emerges when we examine current geopolitical dynamics through the lens of a circus performance. The United States plays the role of a tamer, but with a crucial distinction. The tamer's body represents American military, economic, and political might, while the controlling brain symbolizes specific interests pulling the strings. These interests aren't purely American national concerns, but rather global power brokers using America's tremendous capabilities as tools. Their goal? Expanding influence and controlling what historically Germans called Lebensraum, living space in strategic regions. In this geopolitical circus, the tamer wields two key tools, poles and whips. The former Soviet republic bordering Russia serves as the primary whip, while Baltic states function as additional poles. Russia, in this analogy, represents the powerful tiger or lion, the target of this complex performance. However, this power play isn't one-sided. Sometimes the tiger, Russia, manages to grab the whip, forcing the tamer to switch tools. When one pole proves ineffective, they quickly substitute another. Romania, Poland, creating a continuous cycle of strategic replacements. The most fascinating aspect is when the tiger begins to recognize the true nature of this performance, looking past the poles and whips to identify the real orchestrator. This realization fundamentally changes the dynamic of the entire show. This metaphor perfectly illustrates how global powers utilize smaller nations as instruments in their larger strategic games. The real question becomes, who truly controls these movements, and what happens when the target nation sees through the performance? What makes this particularly relevant today is how we're witnessing this exact dynamic play out in Eastern Europe, with various nations being utilized as strategic instruments in a larger power play. In today's analysis, we're diving deep into the complex web of international relations and power dynamics. Let's decode how global powers really operate, especially concerning Russia and NATO's eastern frontier. Think of it like a chess game, where pawns move first. The Baltic states, Poland, and Romania aren't just random players. They're strategic pieces in a larger game. But here's the crucial insight. America only truly engages when its direct interests are threatened. It's not about ideology, it's about profit and power. Let's take Estonia as an example. If Russia were to engage in military action there, the consequences would be catastrophic. We're talking about potential nuclear scenarios. But here's where it gets interesting. Before reaching that point, There's a whole sequence of escalating responses using different diplomatic tools, Latvia, Lithuania, and others. The real power players understand this dance. It's like a negotiation where everyone knows the rules but pretends they don't. When tensions reach a critical point, suddenly everyone becomes reasonable. Why fight when we can share? That's the recurring pattern in international diplomacy. What's fascinating is how the main powers, the brains behind these operations, stay protected while smaller nations take the risks. It's a sophisticated system where confrontation is managed through proxies until the major players' interests are directly threatened. The key takeaway? International relations aren't about morality, they're about interests and calculated moves. The current tensions we're seeing are part of this larger chess game, where each move is carefully planned and each player knows their role. What's most important is understanding that behind the public statements and military posturing, there's always room for negotiation when real interests are at stake. What do you think about this analysis of global power dynamics? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'm sure my viewers have valuable insights to share. Remember, looking at these patterns helps us understand not just current events, but also what might come next in this complex geopolitical game.